there's just something about being really thoughtful and intentional in your decisions. And it helps people feel really connected to the gathering. I always say when I'm throwing a gathering, my goal is obviously to have an intention, but I also really spend a lot of time thinking about how I want guests to feel, both at the gathering and then when they leave.
Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. If you like what you're hearing on Girls Talking Life, please be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. A new episode is released every other Monday, and I don't want you to miss a thing. My friend Katie Brown is joining me on the show today. Katie is a Texas girl, but after moving to LA, she was finding lots of networking events and people asking her, "What can you do for me?" And she wanted to create a space for authentic community, and she ended up starting her own business, At the Lane, to host intentional gatherings and to help others host intentional gatherings too. Katie and I talk about why getting together is so crucial. If you feel like hosting isn't your thing, Katie would disagree. She says that everyone can be a host, just not the same kind of host. And she walks us through how to determine your specific hosting strengths. With her in-person gatherings, content, products, and services, she strives to make gathering more attainable, fun, and intentional, while also encouraging the host in each of us. Everything we talk about can be found in the show notes for today's episode on girlstalkinglife.com. Here is our conversation. Hey, Katie, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I found you a while ago when I was looking for stuff on gathering, just information or other people out there who are hosting intentional gatherings or getting people together. And that is how I found you. And I've come to love you and all the products and your website and all your letters and ideas about gathering.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a fun journey, but I've loved doing it.
Talk to me a little bit about who you are and what your business is.
Yeah. So my name is Katie, and I am originally from Texas, but I live in Los Angeles now. I have lived out here for about 8 years, and I live in a house with 3 other roommates, also all from Texas. And we lived in this house for about 6 years. And when we first moved into the house, we kind of all had a conversation of most of our friends didn't live in homes. They lived in apartments or townhomes or smaller things like that. And so space was kind of hard to find. And we all kind of made an agreement early on of, since we have this house, we want it to serve other people. We want other people to be able to come in and use it just as much as we do. Like, we're very lucky and privileged to have a backyard and to have parking, which is hard to find in LA. And so we have really treated this house as not just our own, and to kind of serve our community and to serve other people. And in conjunction with that, I've always been someone who loves gathering, and I had been doing it my whole life. I've been throwing parties and themed parties since I was a kid. And when I moved to LA, it was right after college. And so I noticed that for the first time in my adult life, I didn't have built-in community around me. I didn't have my school friends. I didn't have the people who I knew were going to be there in the next year after summer break. And so I was meeting people through work and through friends of friends. And I had a lot of different groups, but it was hard for me to have consistent community. And I'm also an introvert. And so it was hard for me to have authentic community and not just base it in small talk. And
Yes.
LA is a very, very networky town. And I was going to a lot of different events where I felt like people were just asking me, like, who are you and what do you do and how can you help me? As opposed to just, how are you? How's your day going? And just really getting to know you beyond just what can you do for me? And so all of these things kind of came together to form At the Lane, which is a company I've had for about 3.5 years now. And it's really just a place for me to both host intentional gatherings and help other people host intentional gatherings. And it's it's pretty much just those two things. It's everything that encompasses bringing people together for a specific purpose. There's usually a theme or something central that people can understand that encompasses the whole gathering. So every detail from the name of the party to the menu, to the outfits, to the playlist, to the place cards, to the conversation starters, they all guide you through this central theme. And it just helps establish a very intentional gathering where you feel like you've come to a gathering where you felt important, you felt seen and welcomed and known and loved, and how you can replicate that. And so I started doing it for about a year, and I just found so many people were craving that kind of community and were really interested in it. And I was posting about it on social media. And then I started finding people outside of LA, like yourself, that were very interested in this concept. And so I just started sharing every idea I had and my approach and my methods to kind of help other people create this kind of community in their own homes. Because it's not a far off concept, but it hasn't necessarily been put in this kind of light. And so that's kind of how I got started.
You talk a lot about intentional gatherings.
Yes.
As your keyword there. Yeah. Why does that make such a difference?
Yeah, I think truthfully, I didn't even have that necessarily as a phrase when I very first started. I had just gone to a lot of different gatherings where I felt like I was walking in and I didn't know what I was walking into. And also as an introvert, that was really scary to me and really difficult for me to get the courage to walk into a gathering of, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if everyone's going to know each other. I don't know where to sit. I don't know what to bring. I don't know what to talk about. And so I tried to create a system where other people who felt that way, whether or not they felt all those things or maybe just one thing, how could they feel really comfortable? And so part of that came about when I started thinking of, okay, well, every gathering needs a purpose. It needs a why. Priya Parker has written a book. She's a professional mediator. She's amazing. She wrote a book called The Art of Gathering. And I know we've talked about it before. And she talks about the same kind of concept that every gathering needs a purpose. And so I tried to give every gathering a why. And that is really what created just intention behind every decision that I made as a host, from, what am I going to do as the place cards? What are we going to do as the menu? And it helped create a structure to my gatherings that doesn't feel forced, but it feels guided. And when I had a guided structure that, you could change if things weren't working out, but it still was something that was set in place, I noticed a big difference in how the gatherings that I was hosting that I didn't do that were in comparison to the ones that I did. And the ones that didn't have that felt like people were always looking to me of like, what are we going to do next? And people were walking into those same gatherings the same way that I walked into other gatherings of not knowing what's going to happen. And there's just something about being really thoughtful and intentional in your decisions. And it helps people feel really connected to the gathering. I always say when I'm throwing a gathering, my goal is obviously to have an intention, but I also really spend a lot of time thinking about how I want guests to feel both at the gathering and then when they leave. So when you're thinking about the gathering in a week from now, the night after, or in a month from now, what do I want them to feel? What do I want them to remember? And it's almost always, I want them to feel like they were a part of this gathering, that their presence there mattered and that they had a seat for them and they got to know people and people got to know them. So if I have that as my purpose, how can I create that? So how can I have the seating arrangement go so people are having conversations? Maybe I rotate at dessert so more people get to know each other. And so it's little things like that of, okay, now that I have my purpose, how do I execute that? And if I didn't have that and I was just throwing a gathering just to throw it, those are fun. I've been to those. Those are great.
Definitely.
There's great. Not every gathering needs to be this way. But I don't always remember it in the same way when I leave the gathering. I'm just like, oh, that was a fun evening. And then that's it. But I don't necessarily feel like my presence mattered there, or I had a real part in that gathering. And so for me and for hosting and for gathering, that's something that I really put a lot of of emphasis on. And it's something I really try to have at every single gathering that I host.
I love those extra special little touches.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about moving to LA and being in a new area and not having those people around that you normally had around.
Yes.
That, I guess, that lack of community really enforces the need for community.
Absolutely.
So why do you think, Katie, that gathering is so important for us?
Yeah, just bottom line, we weren't meant to do this life alone. I mean, that's been said a million times, but it's so true. I think we're really feeling that in this pandemic and really seeing how, even as an introvert and someone who loves to spend time alone, I need people. I need other people to know me, and I need them to see me, and I need to have fun with other people, and I need to laugh with other people and enjoy and have special memories and moments with other people. That's part of living. And so when you have that, that's been built in and has been consistent for so long, when all of a sudden you don't have it, it can feel really jarring. And I know people feel this at all stages of life, whether they have moved to a new country or a new city, or if they start a new school, or if they lost a loved one, or, just that happens all the time, that your community changes. And so I wanted to create a space that had consistent community. And it's not necessarily that the same people come to every gathering, but that there was something that people could set their calendars to. And that would also kind of inspire them to create this in their own space and in their own communities. Because I think just not having community, it does more damage than people realize. And I was actually talking with my therapist about this the other day, and I was kind of going through a hard time, and she was like, well, your immune system was down, like your mental, emotional immune system was down. And that was infecting every part of my life. And I realized that's similar to community and to gathering. Like if you don't have that, it's kind of like your immune system is down, and it just kind of affects just different parts of your life. And in ways that you may not even realize. And a community doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be 100 close friends. It doesn't, or it could be really small. It could be just a couple of people that really know you. But I think there's so much that we don't realize that connects with having community. Even if you go into work and you don't feel connected there, people don't know you, but then you come home and you have a partner who knows you and who sees you, or you have a group of girlfriends or whatever it is, you have it somewhere in your life, and that it just shapes you, and it helps you feel less alone in this world. And I think everyone feels more lonely than they admit. And I think we just don't talk about that enough. And I think it's something that we all feel. And even when I started at the Lane, the very first event that I had was really just I want to get to know if people would actually like this idea kind of event. And I asked everyone that was there was completely different. I had people in finance. I had people in the entertainment industry. I had single people, married people, introverts, extroverts. I had every kind of, that wasn't intentional. It just kind of happened that way, that I had a lot of different people. And the one thing that I heard from everyone is that they want to feel seen and known by people, and they want a space to do that. And so how do you create a space where all these different types of people feel that? And I think that it was so interesting. And it's a note that I genuinely have written for myself to remind myself of, is that no matter who you are, no matter what you're going through, you still want that same kind of feeling at the end of the day. And you want people who know you, whether or not they've known you for a couple of hours or they've known you your whole lives. Like it makes so much of a difference to your personal life, your health, and everything, that I just think it's so important.
Yeah, those are basic needs that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned not even realizing that that's happening, that you're not getting that need met. And I think that is so true, because I remember being with a group of girlfriends and walking away and feeling so fulfilled, so full. Yes. And I thought, gosh, why don't we do this more? I've been missing this, and I didn't even realize I was missing it.
Yes, that happens all the time. So many times I'll be in my own head about something, about a problem, or about something funny that happened, or whatever it is. But usually it's something that's hard, that I'm going through. And it's just been in my brain circulating for days and weeks. And then a girlfriend will reach out to go grab coffee or to get dinner or something. And we chat, and I bring it up, and even if they don't fix it, because no one's supposed to fix the problems, but just by listening and asking and having somebody else know that I'm going through that, I always leave feeling like, wow, all I needed was just to talk to someone about it. And all I needed was just someone to listen and someone to know that I'm going through this. And I feel more fulfilled than if the problem itself was fixed.
Yes.
And so creating spaces where that can happen regularly, I think is so helpful and so healthy as well.
So what would you tell someone who says, Katie, this is great. I love that you host, but I am not a hostess. That doesn't come naturally to me. That scares me. What do you say to someone like that?
Totally. I actually hear this all the time. It's probably my most asked question by people. And what I say is I kind of flip it in reverse and I say, it's actually not true. Everyone can be a host. I genuinely believe that everyone can be a host. I think what's different is not everyone can be the same host and not everyone can do it the exact same way. And so when I'm working with people, I do a lot of like client work and consultation work on building gatherings and communities in their own areas. And I say, well, what are your strengths? What are things that you're good at? What are things that you love to do? Like if it's someone who doesn't love to cook, maybe you just make potlucks. That's what I do. I'm a terrible cook. And I'm the person who brings a bag of chips to every gathering. And so I knew to be able to do this, like, I'm not going to be the host who cooks the dinner. That's just not going to work for me. And so I made almost all of my gatherings into potlucks for this reason. And so finding something that's your strength. If you're someone who is not super outgoing and isn't good at leading a conversation, maybe you have conversation starters so everyone else can start their own conversations.
That's what I do.
Exactly. It's what I do as well. And there's just something about, I always say to like, take some time and think about yourself. I mean, you are the host and you set the tone for the gathering just by your presence and by what you do. And so if you're tired or if you're exhausted, your guests are going to feel that. And so if you're trying to create a Pinterest perfect party, or if you're trying to replicate something that I've done or somebody else that you've seen online and you're like, this is exactly how they did it, and this is what I should do too, you may not get the same results because you're not the same person. And so approaching it from, hey, I can do this and I can host. I just need to figure out what are my hosting strengths and what are my hosting skills, and also what are my hosting weaknesses? What are things that I'm not good at, or what are things that are intimidating to me that I can either delegate to other people or I can spend extra time working on? What are things that are going to be my roadblocks that get me in trouble? Like, am I somebody whose my calendar is insane and I never have time? Like, okay, I'm going to need to schedule something consistent. So the first Friday of every month, that's going to be my dinner party with my group of girlfriends or whatever it is. Like look at your roadblocks and look at your strengths and then build your kind of hosting profile from there and write them down, like write them down so you know them, so you're familiar with them, and create a gathering that is built off of those things, and you use that as a foundation. And then I always say, once you've done that as a host specifically, you've got to figure out your why. You've got to figure out your purpose. And there's no purpose too big or too small. It can be, I just miss my friends and I wanted to see them. Or it could be, I have a birthday coming up, or, it could be something very traditional, or it could be something really fun. Like I saw this really cool recipe on Pinterest that I've been dying to try, or I've been obsessed with this color palette for a really long time. So I want everyone to dress in pinks and greens, or, whatever it is. There's nothing too silly or too strong at all. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be something that you relate to your guests. It could just be something that personally, that's your why, but that'll help you guide every decision that you make. And so once you know your skills and what you can contribute as a host, then you can build from that why and say, okay, this is the party that I'm going to have. This is the reason why I'm having it. And I know I'm good at X, Y, and Z. I know I'm not good at these 4 things. How can I connect those together? And then you just build your gathering from there. But I think so many people, and what I've heard from so many people is that what stops them from gathering is they don't think they're a good host, or they're not creative enough, or they're not outgoing enough, or they're not skilled enough. And first of all, you are enough. Just period, end of sentence. And I think people get really caught up with how people will look at their gathering. Like, does it look good? As opposed to how does it feel? Like, you don't need a fancy tablescape. You don't need, fancy dinners or things like that. It can just be a pizza night with your girlfriends. That's a great gathering. And it's just by putting that intention and that thought in about how you're going to host it, about how your guests are going to feel, and about what your purpose is for bringing people together, that's what's going to make you a good host. It's not about if you've done flower arrangements your whole life or you make a good charcuterie board or anything like that. That's just icing on the cake. And that's just something that adds to your gathering. It's not what defines it.
Well, I love that you've given us permission to not have to cook.
Yes.
I do like to cook, but I know that lots of people don't, or that makes them nervous to maybe cook for other people. So you just saying that you're the girl that brings the bag of chips just gives everybody, it's just relief, right?
Yeah.
Takes the pressure
absolutely.
off.
Yeah. My dad is an incredible cook and my mom is as well. And I've seen them host and I've seen other people. I have friends who are chefs who can just really cook a whole meal for people. And that I'm so impressed by that. And I love going to those events. I love supporting those people, but I knew very early on that is not my area. And I maybe try to do one or two things. Like, I kind of fill in the potluck gaps of what we're missing. But I always say this in my invitation as well, when I do a potluck, is like, if you want to bring your favorite great grandmother's recipe that you've loved and you've made over and over again, that's great. If you want to bring a pre-made thing from a restaurant that you pick up on the way, also great. If you want to just stop by the grocery store and grab a bottle of lemonade, also great. It's all is welcome. We're not here to the gatherings that I throw. The purpose is not to have a 5-course fancy meal. It's really more just about the people and the community that we're building. And I think everyone knows that going in. And so there's not a pressure to have made the most perfectly looking pie or casserole or whatever it is. And it's led to some really, really fun gatherings and to some really great meals that we've had. And I think when you take that pressure off and you just let people come as they are, it creates such a harmonious gathering and it's so much more fun.
Well, something that you and I had talked about when we talked about getting together to have this conversation is that we're both followers of Jesus.
Yes.
But you wanted it to be clear that your business was not a Christian business.
Yes.
You serve all people. And as Christians, we're supposed to love all people. That is a calling
Absolutely.
on us. And I just wanted you to talk for a little bit about how we make that intentional gathering space for all people to feel welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yes, I am a Christian. I have been my whole life, and my faith is a big, big part of who I am and all the decisions that I make. And it was a big part in At the Lane and in building this business as well. And I did know early on, I had a lot of conversations with myself about, do I make this a Christian business or do I make this a Christian who runs a business? Mm-hmm. And I realized that something I struggle with and something I've felt my whole life is, do I feel like my presence matters here? And I didn't think that was exclusive to Christians. I felt that everyone feels that way, and they feel a version of it, no matter your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, no matter what it is. And so having a space where everyone feels like their presence matters was really important to me. And when I moved to LA, I think being in Texas had a lot of benefits. I love Texas. It's a big part of who I am as well. Southern hospitality, that's definitely ingrained into At the Lane. And then when I moved to LA, it was the first time that I was really surrounded by people who were really different than me, who believed differently, who looked different, who acted different. And I loved it. I loved learning from other people, and I loved getting to know other people's stories. And I really have found that my best dinners are the ones where the table looks different, where people are different types of humans that are around this table. And the most magical thing that I think has ever happened at dinners are when people who are different realize that they're way more similar than they thought.
Yes.
And I think just overall, people are way more similar than they realize. but then at the same time that you can relate to someone over the TV show that you've watched or over the food that they brought, or you can bond and you can create that even base of similarity, but you can also respect their differences. And I say this at every gathering after we go around and do our introductions and our little icebreakers and things. I say, it's a safe space. Like, you're here to get to know other people. We're here to be respectful to each other. And you're here to get to know people's stories. And that may be really different from you. And I think as a Christian, it feels really natural, I think for me at least, to welcome other people and to listen to other people. But I think overall, it can be really hard to listen to other people and not want to just explain your way of thinking or, impose your views and things like that. And so when you set a foundation of everyone who's here was welcomed or invited in the same way, no one is more important than the others. That's why you all brought food and a drink to share, is because we needed all of you to create this dinner. And when you kind of have that, like, you're all entering in the same way, then you can create a basis for similarities. And I work really hard to have a structure, like I was talking about earlier, to have a guided structure where you can learn similarities towards the beginning of your gathering through different conversation, or that's why it's potluck a lot of the time. So you can bring food, everyone's similar in that way. And then as we go into the evening, the questions get more vulnerable. And so you start to learn people's differences, but you've had that basis of connecting with people and similarities. And so you're able to respect their differences, and you're excited about the differences and you want to learn about them. And you're not trying to change people's minds. You're really just trying to listen. And I've seen every time I've had a gathering where that's been a big part of it, I've just seen so much magic and so much growth happen for people, and just learning and unlearning and understanding. And it's always left people feeling like they were seen. And I think that's a universal feeling. And I think to understand that, and I think you're both as a Christian and just as a human, I think you're healthier when you're surrounded by people who look different than you and believe differently than you, not to change necessarily how you think or how you feel, but just to know other opinions and know other things that you're surrounded by. So you're not just living, the way that you've always lived. You're growing. And that's what we do our whole lives. And so how can you do that around a table? And how can you do that in your life? It's by surrounding yourself with people who are different than you. And so I was very conscious of doing that when I started my business. Of, this is not just a Christian problem or a Christian feeling. It's something that people all over the world experience in different ways. And how can we love our neighbors? How can we love each other? Which is obviously a big part of Christianity, and a big part of our faith is loving our neighbors and learning and loving and growing with other people. And so it's definitely connected, but I wanted to have a space where all were welcome.
I love that, Katie. And I love that you said that everyone was needed here to create this dinner.
Absolutely.
That is so
absolutely
like that.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's so true. I think people, especially as hosts, forget that. They kind of think they have to do everything, or everything needs to be completely done before guests arrive. And honestly, the best dinners I've ever hosted are ones where it hasn't been done when all the guests arrive, and there's a couple of jobs for people to do, and they just step in immediately. There's also always one person at every party I've ever hosted, whether it's a dinner party or not, that says, "What can I do?" as soon as they get there, because they need that role of feeling like they were part of it, that they did something. Mm-hmm. And so I really specifically have wanted all of my gatherings for all the guests to feel like they were a part of it. They didn't just attend it. They were needed to make this gathering what it was. And I'm not perfect at it. That doesn't happen at every gathering, but that is a big goal of you were needed to make this gathering and this night and this afternoon what it was. And really emphasizing that to people. And, there's a lot of different ways that comes into play, but I do think that's a big, important part of gathering.
You mentioned a couple of the services that you provide.
Yes.
What are some other things that you do? If someone's not in LA and can't come to one of these gatherings? Totally.
So there's a lot of different things that I do. It's very all encompassing. I do free consultation calls, which have actually been one of my favorite things that I've done. And it's just a quick, like 20 to 30-minute chat about if you want to host a gathering, whether it's just one party and you're not really sure where you want to take it, or if you want to start creating this kind of community in your own area, like how do you get started? And that's, morphed into working with clients and really helping them one-on-one. But it always starts with just a free chat. If you're like, I don't know what theme to do or whatever it is, I love hearing other people's ideas and concerns and questions about hosting, because as you know, and you could do as well, I could talk about gathering for 12 hours.
Yes.
So I offered that. And I also have a subscription box. It's bi-monthly. It's going to be ending at the end of the year, at the end of 2021, but I have 3 left, and it's a gathering in a box. So each box is themed, and it includes some physical handmade products that are handmade by me, and then a gathering guide and a menu template and conversation cards to really help you set the tone for your gathering. And if you're like, okay, I want to bring people together, but I don't know what, here's everything I need in a box. And so that's been really fun. I've loved doing that. And I've also done just a lot of one-on-one client work of people who need events from start to finish, whether or not you're in LA. I've done, like I said, consultation calls, but I worked with a lady in New York who was throwing a baby shower, and I gave her a list of everything to buy, and I gave her the theme ideas, and we worked together, even though we're not in the same state.
How fun.
It was so much fun. It was so good. It was a really precious baby shower. And yeah, that's been really fun. And then I also, on all of my social media, on my TikTok and my Instagram, I'm always posting tutorials and videos and asking questions and opening up the conversation of like, what do you need when it comes to hosting? What are you curious about? What products do you want? What are you looking for? And I have a lot of videos of different ways to set up your table, or of different flower arrangements or place card ideas and things, just to kind of get the ball rolling and get the ideas rolling. And yeah, and then I also have a shop where I do some dried florals, and I have some menu templates and conversation cards for people to print out. And yeah, I kind of try to hit anything and meet people where they're at in their hosting and gathering needs. So even if it's not offered, I kind of do a lot of one-off projects here and there of, I just need this thing, or I need everything. And I'm so passionate about helping people gather and host. And so I kind of just say, what do you need? I did a proposal the other day for someone,
wow,
which was very different. I'd never done that before. So it's really just, if you have any kind of question or idea and you don't see it listed anywhere, it's not out of the question for me to do, because I love this. And I think the world needs more people who want to host and who want to gather. And I want to help you get there.
Yeah, I completely agree. You might be feeling lonely and in need of community, and there are so many other people that are feeling that way too. So you host,
Absolutely.
You are helping them. You are helping bring those people in and giving them some connection.
Absolutely. And I just want to be your cheerleader, however you're doing it. And I can't be everywhere. Hosts who are hosting now can't be everywhere. So if you want to do it, I want to help you get there.
Fall is creeping up on us. I can't believe it.
Yes, I know.
But do you have any ideas or any favorite fall gatherings?
I do. So Friendsgiving is actually my favorite holiday of all time. I've always loved Thanksgiving. That's a close second, but Friendsgiving is just something really magical and special. And I've been living in this house for 6 years, and we've had 5 Friendsgivings, because we didn't last year because of COVID, but it's grown every year. So the first year we did it, we had about 10 people. And in 2019, we had about 52 people.
Oh my goodness. Everyone wants to come to that.
Yeah, we grew up by like 10 people every year, which is crazy. And it's so fun. It's just this big potluck situation. And we had 5 or 6 long tables. And it's just this beautiful gathering because everyone is welcome. But I think fall in general is a really, really good time to gather. I think you finish summer. I mean, in the normal world, you finish summer traveling. And so there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that's just kind of built in of, where did you go over the summer? What did you wish you could have done? And in the fall, there's just this natural aroma of warmth and of invitingness. And so it feels really natural and easy to bring people together in that kind of world. And I've done a plaid potluck before where everyone had to wear plaid. We brought
So
fall
cute.
flavored foods and it was so much fun. I had a pumpkin themed gathering where every dish or drink was pumpkin. We had like pumpkin soup and pumpkin cookies and all of these things. And there's just the possibilities are really endless. And I did the back to school gathering in the fall, and it's just such a naturally inviting time that I think it's the perfect time for gathering.
I also think that anything reoccurring, people's
Yes,
schedules change then. So if you want to add anything in that's like a reoccurring event,
absolutely.
once a month, we're going to get together and do any of those things that you
Yes.
mentioned. Katie, I am going to ask you for your favorite five,
Yes.
something I ask all my guests. And I would love to know, what are you drinking or wearing or listening to right now that are your favorites?
Awesome. Well, the first thing that I'm obsessed with right now is the Olympics. I
Yes.
have been a big fan of the Olympics forever. I threw an Olympics party several years ago, and it was just so much fun. We sat through the opening ceremony, which was very long. It was very, very long, but so fun. And I think there's so much beauty and growth that happens in the Olympics. And so I've really enjoyed being able to watch that and cheer people on and just learn about different people and their stories. And especially now with everything going on, I think having something that everyone can kind of get behind has been really special.
Yes.
And let's see, number two, for summer, I have been I'm wearing one right now in just long maxi dresses. That
Very
is my
nice.
go-to. I want it to be as flowy and not restricting as possible. And there's just so many fun colors for summer. And I've just been obsessed. I feel like every day that I'm not in sweatpants, I'm in a flowy summery dress and I love it. Let's see what else. Oh, I've been very obsessed with the Magnolia Network. I went to Baylor for college. I in Waco, which is where Magnolia is,
Yeah.
and
How
Chip and
fun.
Joanne have taken over, and it's been amazing. And when they launched their network, I was so excited, and I just have found so many shows there that have just felt like a warm hug every time you watch them, and they're beautifully shot and just very intentional and very thoughtful. And the three things that I probably listen to the most are Armchair Expert, podcast, Beck Shepherd. I love an interview podcast like yours. And I love getting to know other people's stories. And I listen to that at work sometimes. I love that podcast. And also the Popcast with Knox and
Yes.
Jamie.
Uh-huh.
I'm a big, big fan. I've listened to them for years. And it's just the best like little delight that I have in my day. And then I also, when I've been working, I found a rainy day jazz not podcast playlist on Spotify. And it's just, even when it's not rainy, it just feels so nice. And I love it. And so that's kind of been my soundtrack to the summer. And then I think I have one more. Five. Let's see. Oh, my number one thing that I've been eating is the Trader Joe's butternut squash ravioli.
Ah,
It's so
you're ready for fall already.
I've been eating it in the winter, summer, spring. I eat it all year long. And I'm obsessed with it because I love fall. I love butternut squash, but it only takes 3 minutes to make, and it's the perfect amount. It's not expensive at all. And whenever I'm at Trader Joe's, I always grab like 4 or 5, and I just kind of keep them in the back. And whenever I'm too busy to make a meal or I need something warm or fun, that's always my go-to. And I love it.
Those are great, Katie. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned, I love all the services you provide, and your website is beautiful, and your Instagram. I'm sure TikTok is awesome too, but that is not my thing.
It's okay. It's a scary whole other world.
Yeah,
TikTok is very strange.
I haven't ventured over there. But I love what you do for
Thank
anyone
you.
who wants to become a host, because you can become a host,
Absolutely.
or anyone who wants to come to your gatherings. I love that your purpose is to make them feel known and loved and seen.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
Yeah. So my website is just atthelane.com, all one word. And that's pretty much the hub. That's where everything lives. You can sign up for my monthly newsletter there, for the subscription boxes. You can see all of the photos from past events I have some blog posts that I've written. Everything kind of lives there pretty centrally. And then on social media, I'm on Instagram specifically. I'm at Gather at the Lane because at the lane was taken. So I'm Gather at the Lane there. But on pretty much every other social platform like Pinterest and TikTok, I'm just at the lane. But all of my links to all the different socials are also on my website. So that's where I say to start, and you can venture off and explore from there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your encouragement. I have loved our conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love chatting with you.
Thanks for listening. I just love Katie. I hope you do too. Find her in all the places she mentioned. And if you're in LA, check out her event calendar for her next in-person gathering. If you're ready to host your own gathering, which I hope you are, you can work with Katie in one of the many ways that she talked about. And since Girls Talking Life is all about being in community with other women, I also have a 5-day workshop where we plan, prep, and gather with our girlfriends. The next round of my mini workshop begins September 13th. You can save your spot by visiting girlstalkinglife.com/thegatheringproject. And participants will get a customized menu template from Katie. And friends, don't let the conversation stop when the show is over. Share your stories and start your own conversations with the girls in your life. I'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Thanks for tuning in.